Hey there, welcome to School of Emo, the podcast where we dive into the world of emo, pop punk, and everything in between. If you've ever found yourself in your car screaming the lyrics to Taking Back Sunday, wearing way too much eyeliner in the early 2000s, adding a buckle or a chain to every outfit you've put on, you are in the right place. I'm Erin Judge, and each week I will be your fellow student, guiding you through the music, the culture, and the history that shaped an entire generation of angsty teens. I am not the teacher of this school. I am a fellow student, here to learn alongside you and from you. Together, we will cover a lot of information that doesn't really matter, but will remind us of the days of stalking MySpace channels and getting lost in chat rooms. So connect your dial-up, turn on your webcam, and let's go to School of Emo. Welcome back to School of Emo. I'm Erin Judge. I am your host, your fellow student, and I am so excited because last week we did a deep dive into Sleep Token. We talked about where they fit within genres. Do they fit in the emo space? Are they more in the metal space? Are they a bit undefined, like many bands that we see right now? Where do they belong? And with their fan base, where do their fans belong? What do they most identify with? This week, we get to recap the Even in Arcadia World Tour that is currently happening, one of the first shows in Brooklyn, New York that we just attended this week or a week ago from when you're listening to this episode. So I'm really excited to dive into my experience with the venue, the space as a whole, the show. Maybe I can get my husband to come in here and share because he's a little bit more of a fan, so he would have more to say. And just overall experience if you're considering going on the tour, seeing them live, whatever it may be. So first things first, getting the tickets for this tour were very hard. We talked about this in the recap episode of Sleep Token as a whole, but their fandom has exploded over the last handful of years, and they are continuing to sell out very quickly with all of their tours, and sell out venues very fast. And this tour was like kind of an odd one. There was like a no resale kind of rule to it. We did, my husband and I accidentally both bought tickets because it was one of those where we were both in trying to use a pre-sale code, trying to communicate through different rooms, and accidentally both checked out and I had better tickets. So we did sell his, but they didn't get to sell until after the show. Hopefully we actually sold them and people got those tickets and we're getting our money back. But it was pretty insane. And so this tour is, I believe, mostly arenas. So kind of those mid-sized venues, not quite the full on like stadium, but pretty big, especially for a band that is fairly young, fairly new in the space. So a lot of drama getting tickets, and the entire tour, I believe, is sold out. But if you happen to get lucky where there are some tickets still available or through resale, then this could be one that is worth seeing or one that you may consider, or maybe keeping an eye on this band in the future or different festivals and things like that, because they do make that circuit as well. So this is not our first time seeing Sleep Token. We saw them last year in Berlin, Germany. We had kind of missed that initial US tour date sale of the tours that they had in 2023 to 2024. And so we're on a bit of a concert spree, if you will. And I had been going to a lot of my bucket list shows and my bucket list bands. And my husband and I were talking about it, and his was Sleep Token. He's been following them since, I believe, their second main album after like the 1, 2, 3, like the initial like EP small albums they had. And so he's been a big fan for a long time, but we've never followed enough to know when the tours are. I tend to follow that. So we talked about it and we were like, oh, we want to go see them. And this was in like late 2023, I believe, or early 2024. And we were looking at the US dates and they had already went on sale. So it was all resale, also had been sold out. And so the resale tickets were wild, insane, like we've been seeing, right, with Ticketmaster bots, stuff like that. So it was, triple to quadruple the original price, hundreds of dollars for one single ticket, not always the best seats, and none that were close enough to us. So we would have had to pay those fees and travel. So we decided to look at some of the international dates in countries where you can't resell tickets for more than face value. And we found tickets in Berlin for only $50 a piece and decided, let's just go to Germany. It worked out. My husband was switching jobs. We ended up making a full week and a half, 2 week trip out of it. And it was great. But even getting the plane tickets to Germany, it was cheaper than trying to get like something worked out in the US. So we had seen them before. We saw them in a smaller than the arena we just went to, but a smaller arena, but still a decent sized venue in Germany, in Berlin. And there were a lot of similarities and differences to our experience at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn, New York, this time around. So, some of the similarities of the experience of the show, Sleep Token, because they're still very anonymous, right? They wear masks, they don't really talk, there's no talking in the show. There is a lot of effects and drama to the performance that is outside of the characters and the band members. So, some other bands, you're going to see a lot of stage work with cameras and the singers and the band members really interacting more closely with the audience, making facial expressions, things like that. You don't get that with this band. And so what they do instead is they utilize their lights. So it's a very light heavy show. If you struggle with like epilepsy or light sensitivity, this is not a show for you. Unfortunately, it's just not going to be a good fit because there are lights everywhere and they utilize the lights to create more emotion and depth to each song. So each song comes with its own light show, basically. There, with both shows, that was true. So utilizing the arena with all of the lights and the effects of lights, some smoke and things like that as well, but mostly just lights, lots of laser style lights versus anything else. I can't remember, I don't believe in Berlin that there were any screens that had um, pictures of the band, like where you could see up close, like zoomed in of the band. I don't believe they had that in Germany. I also don't believe there was any other type of visual through a screen. I don't recall that being the case. With this tour, there was none of that. So there appeared to be two big screens beside the stage at the arena. They were simply even an Arcadia kind of visual background. So the trees with the kind of pink reddish leaves on them, and then there were these curtains, and then this kind of stone gate feature above the stage, kind of encompassing the entire stage. The stage was more in depth than what we had at Berlin, but also very similar, like multi-layer stage, where you had the background singers in one section, two, the drummer was kind of tucked away in one section, almost like they were in little caves of the rock. And then the rest of the members, vessel 1 and 3, or two, vessel 3 and 4, sorry, moved throughout the different sections where you could be in like the little cave. So there was like the piano kind of up on one section. Vessel started at the very top of it, came down. There was another little section. So that was actually very similar to the setup in Berlin, just a little bit more of the even an Arcadia theme, a little tied more closely to the album, but no cameras. So no close-ups. That is to say, one, like don't expect a lot more visuals. Like you're getting the lights, you're getting the band, you're getting the music. Two, if your seats are really far away, I imagine that you're going to have a hard time really seeing what is happening on the stage. And that's something to be mindful about, especially if you're buying resale tickets. That's something to really be careful with. Maybe I would look at the venue, but if you are seated really far away, I would bring binoculars or something to where you can see a bit more of what's happening on the stage. We were in the lower bowl, kind of midway through the arena. We had decent seats. We could see what was on the stage, but I wasn't seeing, like, I could barely make out Vessel's mouth, right? Like, the details are very lost in that just because of that setup. So be mindful about that. Bring something to make that easier. What also happens is because the lights are so much part of the performance, and the band doesn't put a lot of focus on themselves as members, meaning there's not like spotlights put on the different members throughout the show, even getting like a video, but visually experiencing it, it's very hard to see the band members. videos are very hard to take, which is fine. But it can be a bit tricky to see for that reason. It is intentional with the way that the band presents. So it's part of the experience, but something that you may want to note again, if you're going to go and where you're seated and just what that looks like, or if you're buying resale, you're already going to spend a decent amount of money. I would try to get as close as you can because you're probably going to get a better visual. Also, if you are on the edges, because the screens aren't showing anything, you may not miss too much. Just know that like the caves, kind of where they're hiding a bit, you might miss some pieces of that if you're kind of on the edge or side of the stage, but you'll see the main stage pretty well, which is where like Vessel spent the majority of the time throughout the show. One of the biggest differences between our experience in Berlin and our experience in Brooklyn were the crowd reactions or just the crowd experience overall. So whenever we went to Berlin, I don't think it was actually sold out. It was heavily attended, so it was very full. But it was a bit of a smaller venue, and didn't like we were able to buy tickets after the original sell date, so it wasn't like sold out immediately like what we're seeing in the U.S. Maybe that's because of bots and all that stuff. Who knows? But we were in a very similar seat. We were on the lower level bowl, midway through the arena, fairly close, and even seated by like one person beside us, a younger couple that knew every word to every song, like very into it. But nobody stood in the seated seats. Nobody. It was very much like everyone was seated. We sat pretty the whole time, which felt kind of awkward because again, you lose some of that experience. You'll hear me talk about that a lot. I'm very pro standing at a show. I think you're immersed in the experience. It's a better way to connect to it versus like seated kind of disconnects you a little bit. I think there's more energy to it standing. What was also interesting in Berlin, we had like a group of guys behind us just drinking beers the whole time and just talking the whole time, like not even paying attention. So very much more of like a relaxed, casual experience, maybe because of the price, maybe just the culture, not really sure. That was interesting compared to Brooklyn. As soon as, it all started, which started with, they started the shows in a similar way with just different songs. But the very like slow ease in where like they had the big curtain and then it started filling out the Sleep Token like logo. And then once it was fully filled, a beat dropped, it dropped. The members slowly started appearing throughout the stage and then they built up the energy of the song, as they're welcome. They did the same thing, except without the big curtain drop in Berlin. And for Brooklyn, immediately, like as that was starting, people stood up, were in it, engaged, cameras out, all the things. So what you would expect was very much true. We did have someone in front of us this show that he was just looking at like pictures of girls. I wanted to take a photo of him because he was literally just stalking very young looking girls on social media the entire show. And he was at least in his late 30s to early 40s. So kind of gross and weird, but whatever. He spent his money. He wasn't disruptive, thankfully. And the friend he was with was standing in it, watching all of the things. So our crowd was very into it. And it felt like that the entire stadium. What also happened in Berlin, there weren't like fan projects or anything like that. So it felt kind of, again, like the fans were a little bit more disconnected versus in Brooklyn, there was a fan project that was given to us even 2 days before when we went to the merch pop-up, the Arcadia Emporium that they're doing in each city. The fan project was handed out. We held up orange and purple lights like above the camera light, kind of that typical fan project these days, during Damocles towards the end of the set. So that was there. And then there were people in every section that were engaging that and saying, hey, did you get the fan project? Are you doing it? So there was more of that experience, more people like very dressed to the themes, like with the masks, with, the t-shirts and everything from this tour, like people very much decked out versus in Berlin, that was not really the case, which was really interesting. The pre or post kind of merch pop-up specific to cities was very similar. So in Berlin or in their world tour last year, they did this and they did the pop-up the day of the show and after. We missed it the day of the show. We got to go after and they had a city specific t-shirt design and poster. My husband got the t-shirt, we got the poster. It was very cool just because we traveled for it. And then they had like a setup of things you could take pictures with and all of that. They also had that, or they have that with this tour. Again, it's called the Arcadia Emporium. You do have to search a bit to find it, but it's a pop up. They have a setup where you can take photos, and then they have the only really city specific thing they have is a token, and we didn't even get to see it. It was sold out very quickly. Or this, not a full poster, but kind of like a felt ticket that says like the name of the show, the city, and then has like the Arcadia Emporium dates on it. We did get that. Very sadly, we left it in our hotel, and I believe that they threw it away. We called, and just miscommunication on our part. We bought it. We waited in line for almost 2 hours to get it, and we no longer have it. So we lost it. So if you're listening to this and you have an extra one from Brooklyn, please let me know. I will buy it from you, because I'm really bummed about that. But whatever. They also had, which was kind of cool. We just had already waited so long and needed to move on with our day. But they had bandanas, you know, like $20, and they were cool, like kind of a lime green color, sort of like the color of my vest if you're watching this episode, and a cool design that matches that, even an Arcadia design aesthetic. And you could get it embroidered, or like something on it. I don't know if it was specific to only certain designs you could add, or if you could do a name or what. We didn't look into that, but you could get that personalized or like customized for free. And so they had you go through, and then you waited like across the street for that to get done. So it was just an extra wait, which is why we didn't do it. But they let only a few people in at a time. So long wait, but it was very cool. So if you are going to the tour, go. It's very interesting. It was different merch. So there's different merch there than at the show. The show itself, the merch lines were very long the entire show, even after the show. So very intense. I don't know if anyone like went during the Sleep Token set that way. I don't know why you would miss the set of who you came to see, but the lines were very long. So we did not do that. We only did the Emporium the day before. For the or for the venue itself, decent experience, very much like most arenas, like long lines to get in. We got there a little bit after doors open, and so we only waited for maybe 15 to 20 minutes to actually get into the venue, but it was already moving. It was very crowded and a little bit chaotic the way that they had us separated. Like we were told to enter through one section, that ended up being the floor entry only, even though our tickets said to enter that way. So then we had to go to a different section. And so it was a bit of a mess, but not any worse than most places that we've been. And then the stadium itself was fine. Like we're able to get past the main entrance. That's where the lines were the worst, like for drinks, food, bathrooms, all backed up. But if you left that main section, you were great. And then we were in, again, that lower level midsection, could see the stage and everything pretty well. So overall, fine experience. We didn't really eat anything, drink anything, or do any of that. So can't really speak much to the venue beyond that experience. Getting out was also a bit challenging. Again, they funneled us in sort of a weird way, but we were able to get out, get away from the crowd, and we walked back to our hotel versus taking the transit. But transit does, like, there's a station right in front of the arena. So you can technically take transit there and leave through transit. I just don't know where all it goes. So where we were staying, there wasn't just like a direct, easy way. It was just easier to walk the almost mile back than just to wait. So we wore comfortable shoes and made that work versus trying to deal with public transit. So I don't know what that experience was like, but it was very crowded afterwards, but everyone dispersed and then it was fine. So overall, decent experience getting in and out and all of that. Staff was nice. All that was fine. So good experience. Now, for the show and the set list, I will go ahead and link the set list that I had found. Like someone had made a Spotify playlist of the set list after the first show. I believe we were on show number 3 for our show, and it did follow that playlist. What I really loved about the set list is that they did highlight the new album fully. So they played, I believe, 5 songs, Into Woodward. They did play Caramel, Damocles. They ended with Infinite Baths, Emergence, and then Provider, I believe, which is on this album, I believe. So they played a decent amount from the new album, and they spread it out throughout the set list. They started with Into Woodward, and then they ended with Damocles and Infinite Baths. So kind of sandwiched the tour sandwiched the set list with the newer songs, but they did incorporate songs from throughout their entire career. So they even played a song off of One, which my husband was really excited about, just because that was a little bit, I guess, more special, a great callback to the very beginning and those who had followed from the very beginning. That was the name of the song, Thread the Needle. So we went through those lyrics in our last episode. They also played a lot from, some of their more popular albums. So we had Alkaline and Hypnosis. They didn't do too many callbacks at the beginning, but they did play Vor and The Summoning, which are some big ones. So they played a lot of songs again throughout the entire history of their career as well as they could. They have a really long set of songs, like discography. They have a lot of songs that they've put out. So that are pretty popular because, again, they are a newer band. They haven't been around that long and they've just been kind of exploding with every album. And so a lot of people love a lot of their big songs, but they only have so much time. The full performance was about 90 minutes, kind of a typical performance. And there wasn't a lot of like time in between the songs. They were pretty much like one after the other. So very consistent set list. The sound was great. It was overall a good experience. Vessel did interact with the fans a little bit, which was interesting. So the dancing, of course, but he also laid down and seemed to have, I've seen some more close-up videos of this, but seemed to have some kind of engaged reactions with the fans, which was interesting. I believe that was during maybe Aqua Regia, maybe Thread the Needle. I can't remember which song that was, but that was interesting. And there were people actually crowd surfing. Again, that did not happen in Berlin, that happened at the show. And it seemed like he was sort of engaging and pointing and kind of being more into it and connected, which is interesting with the anonymity, but kind of feeds into what the newer album is about. It's like both the gratitude and celebration of the success that they have worked for and dreamed of, while also acknowledging how challenging that is and trying to be anonymous, but rising to fame and being exposed to others in the fandom and all of that too quickly, and just the pressure of that. So it felt very personal. The album feels very personal. The tour also felt a little bit more personal. So that was really cool. There was also lots of like confetti and things like that throughout the set list. One thing that was also pretty cool of the stage design is they had actual water that poured through. So they had like that stone feature, and in the middle, they had the Sleep Token logo that changed colors and everything. And then kind of with that, they had like this water feature that would pour with every few songs. So they played it with multiple songs. But that was really interesting to see, just kind of a cool layer of depth to the stage and the performance as a whole compared to just the songs or, whatever. So very good. And then when they were done, they extended Infinite Baths a little bit, had some instrumentals, but they all just kind of left the stage and it was over. So very, very much straightforward. Again, no talking, no words, none of that, just the music, which I like. The crowd was very into it. People seemed excited, seemed happy to be there. They seemed engaged. So it was a fun experience. It wasn't quite as much as some of the other concert experiences I feel like I've had this year, because this is not my favorite band. I like them a lot. I prepared for it. I enjoyed the show. I would go back again. Very much enjoyed it, but it was different than like the theatrics of My Chemical Romance or the energy and the dancing with the Used, like some of those other shows that I've been a part of. But this was still an incredible experience, and I don't have any regrets beyond leaving my merch in the hotel, which again, I'm so bummed about. And the hotel had zero reason to help me because it was our fault, but I'm just really mad that we did that. But it happens, part of life. So not a big deal. Life will go on. We'll go to another show. All is well. Just a bummer. So we won't have that anymore, but money lost. Everything else is okay. Our experience with Brooklyn was really great too. I definitely prefer Manhattan, especially for shows, just because I feel like the transit is a little bit more straightforward. I'm also just more of a Manhattan girl than I am a Brooklyn girl. But that was really fun. We sat by some girls from Jersey who had also gone to My Chemical Romance, and we talked about that. They gave me a bracelet that said The Offering. So that was really fun, just like a little bit of a engaging interaction, which is nice. But that was it. That's the recap. Now, did it feel like an emo show? A little bit. I mean, people were, again, dressed on theme. I feel like that aligns with most shows these days, but you see that in the emo space quite a bit, the alternative space. People were very friendly, especially waiting in line for the merch thing. Like people were engaging and like wanting to build community. And I think you see that really well in the emo space. The show did feel intimate, but I think there's still the debate of do they fit in? I don't think that they do fit into the emo box. I think they're probably more in maybe progressive rock. I don't really know how you describe them, but the show felt a little bit heavier, more rock forward than sometimes the recordings, especially some of the newer songs. But I think it's because they were intertwined with some of the more heavy scream forward songs that they have. Like it's just likely the fact that it was mixed in versus just one album alone. So after I think the deep dive episode and then this recap, I don't think that they are considered emo, but I'm still glad that I went. I'm so glad I got to experience. I will still listen to them and enjoy them. And I hope that you get a chance to do that too. So if you do get a chance to go to this show, it is unique. It's really interesting. I think it's worth seeing. I don't know how their set and their stage setup would translate to festivals. I know they're playing some festivals. I imagine it's a lot different because you're not getting the lights, and the lights are a big part of the show. So I really do think seeing them in an indoor venue where the lights can really play off of the venue would be the best experience that you have because you're getting kind of that full wraparound experience. And since you're not getting them talking or into the crowd or things like that because of their anonymity, I think you're going to get more in an arena where it's set up to give you that depth. Just make sure again you bring binoculars. So thanks for tuning in. Thanks for joining me on this recap. I wish I could have dragged my husband in here to talk about some of the set. I know he did not love every bit of the set list because he likes some of the deeper cuts to some of the albums that he's been a big fan of since like 2021 or so. And so I wish I could have, but he's currently working on work meetings like the adults that we are. So maybe another time. But for now, that is it. That is our recap. And we're going to get back into the emo world. So stay tuned next week. We're going to flip back into emo and actually talk about Jimmy Eat World, who were very much part of that kind of second to third wave emo push that we saw here in the US. So very excited to cover them. And then we will keep the emo train and the pop punk train, sister trains, going forward. So thank you, and I'll see you in our next class.